Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast presented by Briar Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. For auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, and business insurance, give your business to Briar Greaves Insurance. Find them online at briargreavesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. I'm your host, Scott Reynolds. Joining me today is Adam Slavon for an action-packed, day 3, 4 free agency now? It's kind of like hard to determine what day we're in because technically it's the second day of free agency, but really it's the fourth day if you include Monday, right? So the days are kind of all, ever since the cruise.
Yeah.
The days, Adam, are just kind of all kind of just tracking together, And I'm sure Mike Greenberg and Jason Light feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because the news of Levante David, that was when we were on the cruise, and that felt like that was probably almost a week ago. So all the days in between, you're kind of the suspense of, will the Bucs re-sign this player? Who are they going to sign in free agency? You're on the edge of your seat, kind of waiting for the moves. But the Bucs made a couple of moves today, getting some veteran defensive players. I'm excited to talk about those. What about the addition of Kindle Vildor? Is that how you say it?
Vildor, Vildor.
Top of Jamel Dean in the cornerback room. They get a guy.
Yeah, they signed a corner, all right. Not the cornerback that a lot of people were hoping for. We'll get into his signing and the signing of an inside linebacker in just a minute. But today's show is going to focus on Jamel Dean's future in Tampa Bay. Is he part of the Bucs' plans? We all know that Jamel Dean is a talented cornerback when he's healthy and focused. And the problem with Jamel Dean has just been the injuries. And he has not been that much of a playmaker on the ball when he has been healthy. So right now, he is a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Will that change? We'll get into that in a little bit later in the show. But Adam, let's kind of kick things off today by starting today off and hitting the reset button on a couple of graphics that we put up yesterday when free agency truly started at 4 o'clock Eastern time. The Buccaneers have re-signed a bunch of players. Chris Godwin, Ben Bredesen, Levante David, Anthony Nelson, Greg Gaines, Kyle Trask, Kayvon Merriweather, C.J. Brewer, and Daniel Griesiak. Trask was really, since yesterday's show, the more recent signing. He signed last night, I think, in the 9 o'clock hour. It's a deal that will pay him $2.78 million, but won't hit the cap for that much because of the veteran signing benefit. But right now, it looks like the Buccaneers quarterback room is filled, at least, with Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, and Michael Pratt.
Yeah, and it's not Gardner Minshew, unfortunately. He didn't join the team. But re-signing Trask at the value of $2.78 million, it's cheaper than the projection that Josh Capo came up with at $4 million.
Yeah.
So getting somebody that knows the system, knows all the weapons in Tampa Bay, keeping Trask around for another year doesn't hurt. And it's a rarity, Scott, that quarterbacks are signed to second contracts in Tampa Bay. You have to go way back. I think Sean King was the last one.
Sean King, And
I think there's one other one. But
maybe Chris Sims was one as well. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, but, Trask, he had the best preseason that he had in Tampa Bay last year, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So maybe the arrow's pointing up a little bit for him. He was a late bloomer at Florida, late bloomer in high school. And, we'll see what his NFL pro career turns into. We just don't know, right? Because the first 2 years he was in Tampa, Tom Brady started every game. And then the last 2 years, Baker Mayfield has started every game. So it's actually a benefit to the Buccaneers that they don't know anything about Kyle Trask, because if they were to find out, that means that Baker Mayfield would get hurt. So let's hope that doesn't happen. When we take a look at the free agent comings and goings, the Buccaneers have signed 4 players. They've lost 3. The first 2 signings we talked about yesterday, Hassan Reddick from the Jets and punter Riley Dixon from the Broncos. Today's signings, Kindle Vildor, a cornerback from the Lions, and inside linebacker Anthony Walker from the Dolphins. What I was told about these 2 signings And really, it's something that we've kind of alluded to on this show throughout the week. The Buccaneers are looking to bolster their depth and get better depth. I think that's a smart way to build your roster from the bottom up, especially when you've got a lot of good frontline starters. I think this team is comfortable with Zion McCollum moving forward at cornerback. We'll see about Jamel Dean's future with this team this year. But what we do know is that last year we saw too much of Josh Hayes and too much of Tyreek Funderburk. And when those guys were on the field, bad things happened to this Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense. Bryce Hall was injured in the first game, broke a leg. He was out for the year. So at least with Kendall Vildor, you're getting a guy that's got around 30 career starts with the Lions, the Bears, and also the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, starting with Vildor, his experience. So 68 games, he's had those 26 starts across a couple of teams that he's been on. But I kind of see him being that Tavier Thomas replacement, not somebody that is going to be thrust into action, but more of like that fifth, sixth corner on the end of the 53-man roster, not somebody that's really going to be in the games, but could make an impact on special teams. And one thing that I like about him is not only is he like considered tough, considered strong, but he can make some plays on the ball. Going back to his days at Georgia Southern, he has 9 college interceptions, so he can make plays. I don't think he's really had an opportunity to, but not the worst guy to have at the end of the roster. Somebody that kind of raises the floor, has more experience than a guy like Tyreek Funderburk or Josh Hayes. Not a bad signing, but expect the Bucs to make another move at corner because he won't be the only addition.
Yes, that's well said. The Buccaneers are not done at cornerback, folks. Don't panic. Free agency has just started. There will be plenty of opportunity to pick up another cornerback or two in the draft, as well as another. Cornerbacks always get cut, and you're going to see another wave of cornerbacks hit the market after the draft. And so I do like the fact that this guy has some experience in the league. He's 27 years old. He's still has some youth. He's got some speed. He's a 4-4 guy. He'll play on special teams. That's the only place I really want to see him play. But if he has to see some time on the field on defense, he's better than Tyreek Funderburk and better than Josh Hayes. So this is baby steps for the Buccaneers on the defensive side of the ball in their roster construction, right? So I know everybody wanted more of a splash signing at the cornerback position that has not materialized yet. We'll see how the rest of free agency unfolds. But I do like the other signing that they had today, Anthony Walker from the Miami Dolphins. It's interesting because the Dolphins and the Buccaneers switched linebackers, right? KJ Britt, we talked about Robert Hainsey's departure to the Jaguars, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to the Browns yesterday. KJ Britt will be going to the Dolphins. And this is a move that we forecasted. We said he and JTS were the two guys we knew for sure that were not going to be back in Tampa. Anthony Walker provides some depth. He's a very high character guy, very good communicator. I think that he will fit in really well with Lavonte David as an older veteran. He's 29 years old. But right now the plan is to have Servassier Dennis started inside linebacker, middle linebacker, and then have Lavonte David in his traditional Mo, which is the money backer spot, that weak side linebacker. And they also like Deion Jones. So right now, if the Buccaneers had to go into battle on this Sunday and play a game, Servassier Dennis, who has been medically cleared to return to action from that shoulder surgery, he and Lavonte would be the starters. Doesn't mean that they're not going to draft a linebacker. I believe that they will. You certainly have to do that for the future with Lavonte David's age, 35, and only signing a one-year deal. You need to have another young potential starter in the hopper. That could be somebody in the first round, Jihad Campbell maybe. It could be somebody on day 2 or even day 3. But we suspect that they're going to draft another linebacker to add to this room. But at least you've got some veteran depth there with a 30-year-old guy in Deion Jones, a 29-year-old guy in Walker, and then, of course, Lavonte David with Servassier Dennis.
And what I really like about this Walker signing, Scott, is you mentioned kind of raising the floor of this team. Walker is a better player than KJ Britt, and also a more proven guy. There was a 4-year span between 2018 and 2021 where he had 434 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 3 interceptions. Just his ability to have 100 tackle seasons, stay on the field, and he's stronger. Isn't as much of a pass coverage liability as someone like KJ Britt was.
Right.
And it wouldn't be the worst thing. Last year, the Bucs had Servassier Dennis, KJ Britt kind of platooning.
Yeah.
Walker would be a stronger platoon guy should Dennis not be fully ready to see the field 100% of the time. And that's not even mentioning the Bucs drafting another inside linebacker, even if it's somebody in round 3, like Oregon's Jeffrey Bassa. Going into next season with those 4 guys, plus maybe Deion Jones, I think this room is a lot stronger.
Yeah, this is the better signing, I think, out of he and Kendall Vildor. When you look at Walker, he's better than J.J. Russell and K.J. Britt. So this is a clear upgrade. In terms of Kendall Vildor, he is an upgrade over Tyreek Funderburg, right? And Josh Hayes is just, he's more of a special teamer. I think you're right. This is more of like a Tavierre Thomas type signing, where Walker, if he has to see the field, you're probably not, shaking in your boots nearly as much. I do think that he is a better option than either of those inside linebackers. So I think Tampa Bay definitely was glad to get Walker and glad to get rid of Britt. And that Britt is now the Dolphins' problem in terms of coverage, especially. So, nothing earth-shattering in terms of signings. The big splash guy, of course, was Hassan Reddick. And then their re-signings as well, the Levante Davids, the Ben Bredesons, and the Chris Godwins. So far, a pretty cautious approach to the Buccaneers. They've gone super cheap with a couple of these backup guys, and then they've spent big money on a couple of proven guys, and David and Ben Bredesen and Chris Godwin, all 3 of those guys getting raises. Yeah. And then $14 million with 12 of that guaranteed for Hassan Reddick. So where does this leave the other Buccaneer free agents? Well, we put this graphic up yesterday, had Kyle Trask's picture on it. Now it's got Will Golston on there. So this free agency list is dwindling a little bit, with Britt going to the Dolphins and Trask getting re-signed by the Buccaneers. We don't think Chase Edmonds is going to return. It's highly unlikely Sterling Shepard does. Justin School is the guy that sticks out on this list here for me. I would hate to lose him because I think there's some serious value there. And you have to think for Tristan Wirfs too, because he loves School, who we call Schoolie. Yeah. And he's already lost one of his best friends in Robert Hainsey this offseason. So I'd like to see School return. Some of the other guys, I'd love to see Golston return just for sentimentality reasons. And I think he can still play a little bit. But any of these other guys, I think the Buccaneers are fine with losing, or not losing, but letting go, if you will. But Golston and School are the 2 ones that kind of have my attention on this list. How about you?
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment with School and Golston. One other guy that would be fun is Shaq Barrett, bringing him back, seeing what he has left in the tank for training camp. But you mentioned School and what offensive linemen are getting paid these days. The fact that they can bring back a versatile swing tackle for maybe like $1 million or $2 million, give him a raise, give him a couple million. That's still a bargain, because he filled in last year for Gedeke when he had his concussion. Wirfs, when he went down with a knee, he held his own for the most part. So getting him back after signing CJ Brewer, I think they could bring back Golston as well. Just kind of the end of the roster defensive lineman there. I don't think it would hurt having Golston, somebody beloved in the locker room and all his teammates. So those are the 2 guys.
Yeah, when you look at Golston, certainly his age is a factor. He's up there. He'll be 34, I believe, in July. He knows the system. He's a great locker room guy. He's a glue guy. He's one of really only a few Super Bowl champions left on this roster, right? You've got, on defense, you've got Levante, you've got Winfield, you've got Vita Vea, you've got Jamel Dean. I think that's it, right? Just those guys on defense, right? And then obviously a couple guys on offense, Mike and Chris and Tristan Wirfs. So you're under 10 now in terms of guys just from a couple years ago that won the Super Bowl. So that's certainly interesting. We'll get to some of your questions and comments here in just a second. The last slide we'll put up is the salary cap situation currently as it stands right now. There's Mike Greenberg. According to overthecap.com, the Bucs have just about $9.5 million worth of cap space. But this does not include the team's new free agent signings. So What it does include is $4.5 million in salary cap room, which the team saved from releasing safety Jordan Whitehead. So we talked about it before. Greenberg can always restructure some contracts to create more cap room. So we'll see what some of these first-year numbers come in for, even for a guy like Hassan Reddick that signed a one-year deal in Tampa Bay. He's not going to have a $14 million cap hit this year.
Yeah.
They'll have a void year, maybe even two, but probably one. So they might drop his value down to, say, $4 or $5 million, and then push some of that other cap money into next year in the form of like a dead cap hit, if you will. But they've got about $9.5 million right now. I would suspect that we'll see a restructure at some point. But Mike Greenberg, again, is a cut as he needs to, cut as he goes kind of guy. So he's not going to sit there, do a bunch of restructures, clear up $30 million.
And then not sign anyone.
And then not sign anybody, right?
Yeah.
So he's doing it very targeted. So we want to sign this guy. We need this much cap room. We're going to do this restructure and create this much money so we can afford this guy right here. So that's typically how Greenberg works. And, and I would suspect that that's how it's going to continue. And of course, the Buccaneers can save over $8 million if they were to part ways with Jamel Dean. And we'll get into that in just a little bit here, but we'll get to some of your comments here. Flash Gordon says, like Anthony Walker and Kendall Vildor's tape, saw Kendall get a pass breakup on Mike Evans.
I know Josh Capo, he was watching some Walker's tape last year against the Rams, and he was a fan of his game and what he was able to do. Seems like a very intelligent player who can make reads on the football, which will be needed because the middle of the field was like a black hole where tight ends were able to just find whatever they wanted to. And going back to Vildor, again, that points to his ability where if he's forced to play in a pinch, he can make some plays happen.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy you only want for, a half or a game or something like that, not as an extended starter. But my guess is that you're going to see the Buccaneers drafting a cornerback or two. And speaking of that, you can find out tonight who we have the Buccaneers drafting, because our mock draft comes out in 40 minutes. Mock draft version 3.0 hits pewterreport.com at 5 o'clock sharp. So make sure you check that out at the end of this podcast. And then tonight, Josh Capo and myself will be talking about it at 8:30 as the Bucs bolster their defense. And that's the theme of our mock draft. Most of those picks are defense. We do have them picking a wide receiver. You have to tune in tonight at 8:30 to find out, or read the mock draft on pewterreport.com at 5 o'clock. And then, as if one mock draft show wasn't enough, you can join Adam Slavon and Josh Capo and PFF's Trevor Sikkema on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock right here on Pewter Report TV for a live Bucs mock draft. What that means is they're going to use the Pro Football Focus simulator, because Trevor Sikkema is part of Pro Football Focus, former Pewter reporter. And you can see who Trevor and Adam and Josh end up selecting for the Buccaneers. They'll do a couple rounds. It's always a fun endeavor. We do that about every other week in the off season. So that's Sunday at 9 o'clock, but make sure you join us tonight at 8:30. We'd love to get your comments, answer your questions about our latest mock draft. Again, the mock draft hits pewterreport.com at 5 o'clock shortly after the show here. We have a super chat to get to, so let's do that. You know the rules. When you super chat us, we try to do our best to have you jump the line. Mike Wells with the $5 super chat. Thank you. Love the show, Scott and Adam. Your guys' coverage is always the best.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate your support and the support of everybody who watches the show, whether you super chat us or not, whether you're a subscriber or not. But you know what? Do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button. We're on the way to 18,000, and it costs no money to subscribe. So it's very easy to do. Just hit the subscribe button on Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel, and we'd love to have you help us get to 18,000. Our goal is 19,000 by the draft, and that might be a little bit of a stretch, but we're about a month and a half away, so we'll see what happens. But if you can, just hit the subscribe button and help us out there. Another super chat from Mike Wells. Thank you, $10. Scott and Adam, I feel like the way we've hit free agency works really well with filling some positions in the draft. Now I feel like this draft is really solid at linebacker and defensive back, especially on day two. Your thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, Scott, I was going to make the point to you before because you mentioned that the Bucs free agency so far, they've kind of taken that cautious approach. And that's something that I can appreciate. We can talk more about how that relates to Jamel Dean. But with like the top corners, Charvarius Ward getting 18 million a year,
Yeah.
Carlton Davis getting 18 million a year. Each of the top corners on the market have been getting 3-4 million more a year than what was projected by PFF, projected by us. And that speaks to the value that someone like Dean still has relative to that. So Mike makes a great point in that the way that the Bucs have attacked free agency is again re-signing guys that have been on the team, are willing to take a little bit less, like Chris Godwin, Ben
Yeah.
Bredeson. But looking ahead at the draft, there's guys that we saw at the combine, like Jeffrey Bassa, like a Kobe Bryant from Kansas, where if they can draft those guys rounds 3-4, you're still getting a lot of value. Then you're still adding veterans that kind of raise the floor of the team. I mean, the Bucs have shown that's the blueprint going forward. You kind of raise the floor, you draft and develop, and you keep staying in contention. So I really appreciate this comment and fully agree.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there, Adam. The thing too with Jamel Dean, it's kind of crazy, but he's looking like a bargain.
Yeah.
And I kind of floated that notion to one of my sources in the Bucs brass, and they agreed because Jamel Dean right now is averaging $13 million per year. And again, he's a quality starter when he's healthy. Where you notice Jamel Dean is not giving up plays in coverage or giving up touchdowns per se. It's when he's not in the lineup, right? When he's on the bike or he's on the training cart getting carted off or something. That's where you notice him is just the inability to stay healthy. And now he's getting up there a little bit in age, and those injuries, he's not going to become healthier the older he gets, right? That's just kind of how you have to look at it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing with Jamel Dean. You have J.C. Horn making $25 million a year. He's the highest paying cornerback in the league in Carolina. Jalen Ramsey with the Dolphins, 24.1. So right now, Jamel Dean is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. He is the 20th highest paid corner in the league. And there's some corners ahead of him that just honestly don't really feel like they belong there. So, to me, I think that this team is not as maybe driven to get rid of him right now because the replacement cost would have been so much higher. And the other consideration, too, that you have to look at when it comes to Jamel Dean is Zion McCollum. If you want to extend him and pay him $18 million a year or so, can you afford to have two $18 million corners on your roster at the same time? That takes up so much cap space.
Yeah. And one comment here that I like from Andrew, Dean doesn't go on that Bucs cruise if he knows he's getting cut. Maybe we should have read into that a little bit more. But the fact that he was on there kind of points to him returning. But again, relative to what other corners have been getting, there's another comment here from Leadus Productions referring to Nate Hobbs getting $12 million a year from the Packers on a big 4-year deal when nobody expected him to get a multi-year deal. It just speaks to corners on the market are getting way overvalued, which leaves someone like Dean. You mentioned him being the 20th highest paid corner. Pro Football Focus, their grades since he's entered the league in 2019, he's ranked between the 10th and the 26th best corner, which is really solid. And that value is like the sweet spot. And that points to at the beginning of the offseason, we may have said that Dean had negative value, and you look at the injuries, the lack of ball production, but now it looks like a surplus value.
Yeah, it kind of does. And I think to your point there, Adam, when you look at Jamel Dean, do you have a replacement, right? It's one thing to sit there and just, get rid of a guy. And that's what happened last year with Carlton Davis, right? They traded away Carlton Davis, but they had his replacement on the roster already in the form of Zion McCollum, right? So you could do that because you had Jamel Dean on one side, you had Zion McCollum on the other, and then they signed Bryce Hall thinking he would be the option at number 3. But right now, there's no clear-cut option that is certainly as good or better than Jamel Dean. And the thing about Dean is they don't necessarily have to release him right now because you can save that cap space at any point in time. So if the Buccaneers do end up making a trade for a veteran corner, or they draft a corner in the first or second round. Maybe it's a guy like Savon Ravel from East Carolina, and they feel good about his prospects. Then you can part ways with Dean and still save that $8 million at any point in time. You could cut him this summer, or maybe look to trade him to a team that maybe missed out on a cornerback for a 2026 draft pick. So there's a couple of different ways that Jamel Dean can be a part of this team, either as trade collateral and getting a draft pick, as someone who can be released later and free up some cap room, because this team will need in excess of $6 or $7 million over the summer to sign their draft picks and have that rookie draft pick pool. Or he might just stick on this roster and maybe he's the starter while a younger cornerback that gets drafted ends up developing behind him. And here's the thing. If you know that Jamel Dean is going to give you, say, 12 games out of 17 because he's going to be injured, well, maybe you just put up with that for a year and have a better backup in place. Or maybe Jamel Dean starts the year and then at some point in time you transition to your first or second round pick, whoever the Buccaneers end up selecting at the cornerback position, and go that way. And if Jamel Dean is your $13 million backup for a year, that's not the worst thing in the world. Again, it doesn't matter in terms of the salary cap where guys are on the depth chart. You obviously want your highest paid guys starting so they earn their money. But in this situation, Jamel Dean coming off the bench as cornerback 3, knowing this defense, having experience in the secondary, not the worst thing in the world.
It's not. And compared to the Falcons, they have a $35 million backup in Kirk Cousins. I'd say that the Bucs wouldn't be doing too bad if Jamel Dean was the cornerback 3. But you had that picture of Ravel on there, and it got me thinking. So if the Bucs go into next year, they draft Ravel in the second round, Kobe Bryant in the fourth. You have a room that's potentially McCollum, Dean, Ravel, Bryant, and then mix and match whoever you want at 5 and 6. How strong of a cornerback room would that be? Like going forward next season, but also into the future.
That would be really strong, especially if these guys pan out, right? If Kobe Bryant, let's use your example there, if he is an early day 3 guy, 4th round pick, and let's say Savon Ravel ends up being maybe the 2nd round pick. All right, so you've got 3 guys, including Zion McCollum, that you like on the field on defense. I'm not talking about Josh Hayes because he's your gunner, your special teams guy, or maybe he's pushed off the roster. But those are 3 guys on rookie deals. And then you have the option of either extending Zion McCollum this year, or maybe you wait until next year because this is his contract year to address his contract extension. But from a salary cap standpoint, like that's gold right there phenomenal. Going forward. Yeah. So the thing about this too with Jamel Dean, you mentioned him being on the Bucs cruise, and we did see him. He's a great guy. He's a great locker room guy. He's one of those guys that always has a smile on his face. He's not a detractor in any way from the team. I think the biggest thing is if they can just build this roster from the bottom up, the cornerback position. We were all writing them off. We were all looking at, they could save over $8 million in salary cap space. And you know what? They still might part ways with them. But I guess what I've been led to believe is they don't have to. And they'll only do that if they have someone that they perceive to be as good, if not better than Dean. And I think that's the smart play. You don't want to sit there and just release somebody just to clear up cap space when you don't need to clear up cap space by cutting a player. You can do that by restructuring contracts.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because the Bucs don't want to release Dean right now. And then right now they don't have a cornerback 3. And then you release them, you don't have a cornerback 2 either. And so last year you made the point that McCollum kind of replaced Carlton Davis, who's that young up-and-coming corner who kind of flashed whenever he was on the field. Last year, the depth corners were the team's weak spot. Guys like Hayes and Funderburk, when they saw the field, they kind of know that they're destined to be cornerback 5s and 6s. They're not going to immediately jump into Dean's spot. And so I think cutting him without even having a replacement on the roster internally and just expecting that they're going to go out there and get somebody externally, I don't think that's the right play.
Yeah. Aaron Lemaster says you can have rookies start in Bowles' system. Has been done here before. Todd Bowles is not shy about starting rookie corners. He did that last year with Tyreek Funderburk. It didn't work out well because Funderburk is an undrafted free agent, and I just think the Buccaneers got a little too enamored with the kid's tools and just didn't have the experience. And coming from Appalachian State, it's not like he played at Alabama where he's going up against SEC caliber athletes on a week in, week out basis, guys that are going to be playing in the NFL, right? So I think that was a miscalculation by the front office and the coaching staff with a guy like Funderburk. But when you have, guys, whether it's Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean, they played as rookies in 2019 when they were drafted. And Carlton Davis was a second-year guy. He was drafted in 2018. But Todd Bowles went with that secondary, also played some Mike Edwards as a rookie too a little bit, the safety out of Kentucky in 2019. So he's not afraid of playing that. And as we heard from Bowles in Indianapolis, he said cornerback is the easiest spot to come in and learn his system.
Yeah. And looking at a guy like Christian Izien, he was somebody that was undrafted out of Rutgers. He came in and he was the starting nickelback. And then even looking at the safety spots, Antoine Winfield Jr. hit the ground running. Tyke Smith, when he came in, he was making plays, probably the best playmaker in the secondary last year. So Todd Bowles, again, he isn't shy of drafting young defensive backs because he can kind of mold them. And he's done it throughout his tenure as defensive coordinator and now as a head coach. And I think that's his strong suit. Even though that the production wasn't there defensively last year, there is promising pieces in place. And then adding a couple more young guys, I think the sky could be the limit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. Meets McGee with the $5 super chat. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. I hear Will Johnson's hamstring could prevent him from running his 40. That's the Wolverines cornerback. And I heard that he didn't look too fast on tape. Could he fall in the draft? I mean, that's possible, but I think when you look at the overall skill set and the tape, it's pretty good for Will Johnson. If he slides down to number 19, I think definitely the Buccaneers are interested. He is a bigger corner, certainly fits that Todd Bowles, mold for an outside corner. I'd be surprised if he's there. I think that obviously after Travis Hunter, he's probably the next cornerback off the board. But, if there are some concerns about his speed, Tampa Bay has drafted cornerbacks that aren't exactly the fleetest of foot before. Todd Bowles does like fast corners. Zion McCollum is one of the fastest coming out of the combine. But you look at a guy like Carlton Davis, for example, he ran in the 4.5s, doesn't have that long speed per se. But, I think as long as you have some length, if you lose a step, that long arm can make up for it. As long as you time your pass breakup, in an appropriate level. But Dean does have some speed too. Both he and Zion are sub 4.4 guys. So a lot of times now, the 40-yard dash times don't matter. A lot of times, what teams will do is they will sit there and they will use technology. And they'll put on game film and use mile per hour devices where they can sit there and basically put on film and then have a device that will measure how fast they're going in miles per hour and then extrapolate that data, and come up with 40-yard dash times with guys. But I think even the 40-yard dash time is being replaced by miles per hour. We saw that at the Senior Bowl. That's how guys were measured with those catapult vests that they wear, and track them that way.
Yeah, and I think that technology is really helpful, and it kind of accommodates for like the game speed, because a guy like Carlton Davis, while he wasn't running a 4.3 or a 4.4, he kept up with Jamar Chase. I remember a couple of years ago in that one game, he had like 4 pass deflections. And so while Todd Bowles likes speed, he also values physicality. And a guy like Will Johnson, he offers that. And what's interesting is in the pre-draft process, he's been mocked so much in the top 5, top 10. Yeah. If he was to fall at number 19, the Bucs could really not only take the best player available, but also take a player at one of the biggest positions in need. It would check a lot of boxes. And a guy like Johnson, he could be that guy where if he came in as a cornerback 3, he could quickly become a cornerback 2.
Yeah, you talk about a guy with ball skills, 9 interceptions in 3 years at Michigan, doing it at a high level. He had 3 of those interceptions, 3 out of the 9, were returned for touchdowns, including 2 last year. He's got 10 pass breakups. But as we know, Todd Bowles loves the ball hawks, and that's something that Will Johnson can certainly bring. And I would just be shocked if he was there. And I definitely think that he is a Buccaneer type corner. Again, the speed is one thing, but at 6'2", 194, doesn't have the longest arms, but they're long enough at 30 inches. I would be surprised if he would fall to 19, but I think Tampa Bay would certainly be interested for sure. And folks, I think that you're going to be interested when you give Briar Greaves Insurance a call. And the reason why I say that is because first of all, they're my insurance company. And the one thing that I love about Briar Greaves Insurance is the fact that they're Tampa based. I know John Greaves, son of Briar. He's my personal agent. I can text him, I can email him, I can call him. They're fast, responsive. It's not like I'm calling some 1-800 number and getting somebody who I can't understand or that I don't even know or have a relationship with, and I'm not on hold for 20 minutes trying to get someone to answer my call. That's the type of service that you're going to get working with an independent agency that you can trust. So what I ask you to do is support our advertisers here at Pewter Report. Go to BriarGreavesInsurance.com. Better yet, give them a call at 813-876-4166. They can help you with homeowners policies. I've got my homeowners policy through Briar Greaves. I've got my auto policy, happens to be with Travelers. But what they can do is they can shop all of the different carriers and get you and your family the best price available. Folks, there is value in that. Instead of you spending your precious time calling around, waiting on hold, getting quotes from all these different insurance companies, whether it be for homeowners, auto, flood, boat, or business, let Briar Greaves do the work for you. That's part of what makes them special and part of what sets them apart from other agents. So protecting your assets starts with a company you can count on. Trust me when I say count on Briar Greaves Insurance. The late, great Mark Cook turned me on to Briar Greaves Insurance many years ago. I've been a very satisfied customer, and I know you will be too. BriarGreavesInsurance.com, 813-876-4166. Folks, we are 20 minutes away from the release of our Pewter Report mock draft version number 3. And then tonight we will be talking about that at 8:30 as the Bucs bolster their defense. Josh Capo and I return to Pewter Report TV tonight at 8:30 to discuss the mock draft. So after dinner, join us and bring your questions and comments. And if that mock draft isn't enough to tantalize you, then you can join Adam Slavon and Josh, as well as PFF's Trevor Sikkema for a live Bucs mock draft on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. So be there or be square when it comes to the Buck mock draft shows, because we've got a lot of draft coverage coming up between now and the draft. And of course,
we'll got another month and about a half now. So
I know, and we're gonna have a 3-day mock draft show like we always do too. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So we're super excited about that. Let's get to a couple more of the comments here. This is from John B. Adam, take it away.
Yeah, so John V says, how can a dude that is allergic to ball production and actually being on the field be a bargain? The complacency is unreal. And I wanted to point out this comment because this is a sentiment that a lot of Bucs fans have about Jamel Dean. But compared to other corners around the league, Jamel Dean missing a few games is kind of what the Bucs expect. And also it's a position where corners, they go down left and right. And so while if the biggest thing for Jamel Dean is just staying on the field, the fact that when he is on the field, he is a solid corner, and not every corner out there in the free agent market on other teams is getting 5-6 interceptions a year. It just doesn't happen. And the 2002 Buccaneers were kind of the anomaly in the fact that they had 31 interceptions, but that was also one of the best defenses in NFL history. So for a corner, if they get 2-3 interceptions in a year, that's a really good year. And compared to what other corners are getting on the market, guys that are less proven, a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., who's still on the market, he's projected to make what Dean's making now. He only played 4 games last year and has similar, if not worse, ball production, isn't as physical of a corner. I mean, it's not just complacency. It's the fact that these guys have been in the system. They know Todd Bowles' defense inside and out. For better or for worse, you know what you have in a guy like Jamel Dean, a guy that's on the market right now. He might not have the kind of upside that you think. And so that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, John also says, loves ball hawks, starts Jamel Dean for another season. Nobody's saying Jamel Dean is going to be a starter.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
I mean, Jamel Dean might not be on the roster. All we're saying is it's March 13th. He's still on the roster. We're looking at all of the potential scenarios. And Jamel Dean might start. He might be a backup. He might not be on this team by the time training camp comes around. But as it stands right now, what we haven't seen is an appetite for all of a sudden this team to just wash its hands of Jamel Dean and move on from him. And I think that's the smart thing to do until you have a replacement. And it might be a thing, too, where Jamel Dean gets traded in training camp to another team or in the preseason if they feel like they have addressed the cornerback position either in the draft with a stud caliber, cornerback who's ready to start as a rookie, or they add another free agent after the draft.
Yeah,
there's going to be more veterans that are going to be available in the second wave of free agency after the draft. After some of these young cornerbacks make the team, they're going to be shedding some excess corners, usually guys that are maybe 30 years old or so, a little bit, longer in the tooth. But you might get a guy that would be as good as Dean or maybe even better after the draft. So again, we're only a couple days into free agency here. So let's not panic about the situation. All we're saying is Jamel Dean is still on the team, and it may stay that way. It may not. Yep. I'm not Jason Light or Todd Bowles, and I don't know who's going to become available. I don't know who this team's going to draft yet, but I don't think it's a prudent thing to do just to cut him and not have his replacement on board right now. Kid of Villain says Dean got cooked last game of the season when we lost to Washington. He got hurt in that game. The guy that got cooked was Josh Hayes. Hayes got cooked. He gave up the touchdown to Washington's receiver. Help me.
Was it Brown?
Terry McLaurin.
Okay.
Yeah, he gave it the touchdown to Terry McLaurin on 4th and 2. And this is like in the second half when Dean was out of the game. And then Josh Hayes gave up a 21-yard catch and run to De'Ami Brown on 3rd and 6 on that final drive that allowed Washington to move into field goal range. So he didn't get cooked in the game. His replacement got cooked, but Dean helped cook the Buccaneers by getting hurt again. Yeah. And so that's the problem with Jamel Dean is he just has not been reliable. And this team, Jason Light, Todd Bowles, they didn't have a good enough replacement in there to help things out. So, that's something lessons learned and painful lessons learned in that game for sure. As Nav Gill says, 40 times matter for corner Scott. You want speed for sure, but what I'm saying is the 40-yard dash time. If you don't have a 40-yard dash time on a guy, it's not the end of the world because you can use with catapult technology, with miles per hour technology, you can determine how fast somebody is. Other ways rather than the stopwatch and having them run 40 yards in a straight line. So that's all I'm saying is I'm not saying speed doesn't matter. Speed matters, but if someone in the pre-draft process does not have a 40-yard dash time, that's not a reason to take them off your board or necessarily move them down. If the tape is good, you can watch on tape too. You can sit there and say, this receiver runs a 4.38 and he is running stride for stride with this 4.38 wide receiver. So even if you don't have a 40-yard dash time on a cornerback, you can gauge on film and also, again, using technology to determine what their miles per hour is. That'll give you a glimpse of their speed, and that is important for a cornerback because those guys do run 40 yards down the field for sure.
Yeah, they do. And Scott, I want to make one more point when talking about the Commanders game. It wasn't just Dean that cooked the Bucs defense. It was the Bucs defense inability to get after Jaden Daniels and bring him down. So the pass rush, getting Hassan Reddick, probably getting another edge rusher in the first or second round of the draft. You address the pass rush, you get Todd Bowles able to call plays a little bit differently than he did last year, to be frank. Right. And the fact that he can blitz more, he can play a little bit more press man, not just backing his corners off because guys are getting cooked in the middle of the field. I mean, that has to help in some regard to Dean's play. If Dean can play more like the press man corner, you might see a return to form in 2022. I think Meets McGee had a super chat kind of referring to his PFF grades when he was the 10th ranked corner in the league. He had that big year to where that he got that 4-year extension. So I think that the pass rush, if that's better, that'll help guys in the secondary, and especially Dean.
Me and Spiggy, $2 super chat right on time. Just a few years ago, Dean's PFF grades were tops. And again, he's one of the better cornerbacks when healthy, when focused. The problem is the unreliability, the inability to catch the ball when it hits his hands, right? He's not a natural interception guy. What's that?
The Detroit game in the playoffs when he had it in the end zone and it just went right through his hands.
Yeah, that was pretty damning right there, because that gave the Buccaneers, I should say, gave the Lions an early 3-0 lead in that game. And, an interception there, that was the first time they would have picked off Jared Goff. I mean, there's the picture right there. I mean, he drops that like that's a gimme interception right there. But he dropped that interception. The Lions kick a field goal. They go up 3-0, and then the route was on. This is how Jamel Dean ended that playoff game. So the problem for the Buccaneers and for Dean is especially in games where it has mattered most. That's the Lions game, right? And then this is the Commanders game right there, and that's the second half. So that $13 million cornerback is not helping you when he is on the sidelines or being driven to the locker room in a cart. So that's been the frustrating thing with Jamel Dean is just making sure he's healthy. And again, he's getting older, and typically the older you get, you're not going to get healthier. So we'll see what happens. But as it stands right now, he is on the team. And me and McGee, a member for 2 months, said PFF grades. We know what you meant.
Yeah.
We got it settled.
I do like Kevin's comment here, just kind of, again, referring to the strategy that the Bucs might have in drafting 2 corners and then see how Dean stacks up to them. And that, again, it points to, hey, if Ravel or Kobe Bryant, they're playing like a starter in training camp, you can cut Dean, still save the $8 million, move on and get younger. So I think right now you kind of have to hedge your bets that Dean's the best that you have and what's on the market and what you have in the room. You're not going to get better by signing one of the free agent corners out there right now.
Yeah.
But in the draft, if that's an avenue where you get a guy that can be a starter right away, you can cut your losses and move on at that point.
Yeah, I agree. Bryce says, if anything is going to be done with Dean, it won't be till after the draft to make sure that they have someone worth it. Been saying it since the offseason started. Yeah. And that appears to be the case with them not jumping in and getting a starting caliber cornerback in the first wave of free agency, which has already come and gone. That seems to be the route that they're taking, is they're going to hold on to him until they can get someone who's better. And they may end up hanging on to him the entire season. And again, if he is cornerback 3 or 4 and he's the Super Bowl champion and he knows this defense, that's not the worst thing in the world. I'd rather have him come off the bench if a couple guys get injured rather than Tyreek Funderburk or Josh Hayes, because at least I know I've got a much higher floor guy later in the depth chart. And then maybe you move Dean in the 2026 offseason or trade him at the deadline or what have you. But I think that's the way it goes. Nathan Elliott with a comment here for you, Adam.
Preach it, brother Sylvan. The pass rush will fix the secondary. Preach it. Shout out, Nathan. Enjoyed the time with you on the Bucs cruise. And yeah, again, I don't think enough fans are considering the addition of Hassan Reddick and just an improved pass rush, what it's going to mean for the secondary. Because if you have a bad pass rush and a bad secondary, it's going to be a bad defense. And that's kind of what it was last year to some extent. But if you have a solid pass rush that's improved, you have the pieces. You have Antoine Winfield Jr. who's coming back, and he's going to probably look more like his all-pro self than being injured last year. You have Tyke Smith, Izzian. I mean, there's so many solid pieces where if they're all on the field together healthy, and injuries play a part in it too, this can be a defense that returns to form in a big way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if the starters stay healthy, like I really like what they've done and what they're going to do too, right? We know that you're going to get 4 or 5 impact guys in this draft on the defensive side of the ball. And the Bucs have been killing it in the draft. I mean, I really trust their process. I trust their evaluations. They've gotten so good that we're seeing guys on day 3 come in and eventually be starters or at least very good role players Guys like Kate Otten, 4th-round pick, Bucky Irving, 4th-round pick, Servastier Dennis. We'll see what he does, but you pencil him in as a starter now as a 5th-rounder. Zion McCollum, 5th-rounder. He's a starter and going to get a big payday. So I like what they've done in the draft, and I trust Jason Light, Mike Beal, and the scouts that they have there. Wasp with a good question. Can they ask him, meaning Jamel Dean, to take a pay cut? So this is where it gets a little dicey, because right now, if you go to Jamel Dean and say, hey, Jamel, we don't feel like you're worth $13 million a year. How is he going to take that? Probably not too well. And he might say, okay, well, I'm not going to take that. So what are you going to do? Release me? I guarantee you right now, if Jamel Dean gets cut, he's going to make more than $13 million in free agency. Is he going to make 18? I don't think so, but he might make 14. He might make $14 million, or better yet, if for Jamel Dean, he's not going to lose any money. He'll get at least $13 million in free agency from somebody, right? Because we've seen lesser corners sign for as much or more than Dean, or pretty darn close to it. So the Bucs don't have a lot of bargaining power now, unless they wait a little bit, and this would be a bit of a cutthroat move. But you wait a little bit until the salary cap situation for some of these teams, kind of like gets tighter. And then they start focusing on the draft. And it's almost like musical chairs, where now there's not a chair for Jamel Dean to sit at. And you say, hey, you need to take a pay cut, or we're going to cut you. And there really isn't the teams out there that have the cap room, or that have the roster space for you. Maybe a team has a lot of salary cap space, but, like, for example, the Patriots signed Carlton Davis to a big deal. They have Christian Gonzalez on the other side. Yeah, there's not a job opening for him, and if you're the Patriots, even though you have $103 million in cap space, are you going to want a $13 million corner along with an $18 million? And the $13 million guy is going to be your backup because he's not as good as Davis and he's not as good as Gonzalez?
Yeah, and I think that's well said. And as Carlos puts it here, Dean is like Briar Greaves for the Bucs. He's a good insurance policy. Keep him until we have a better option. I think you could state that perfectly there.
Yeah, for sure. Folks, we're excited about tonight's mock draft show. I love having Josh on talking about our mock draft. We do a really good job, I think, of hitting on the Bucs' best bets each year, and going to the combine, going to the Senior Bowl, seeing these guys, interviewing them, seeing them up close in person. We've done the best job at Pewter Report in nailing Bucs players, and so I invite you guys to join us tonight at 8:30. We also are greatly appreciative of the fact that Walk-Ons is the exclusive sponsor of not just our mock drafts on pewterreport.com, but also our mock draft shows. And so what I ask you to do is get to Walk-Ons. And if you haven't been to Walk-Ons yet, the tournament's coming up, right? It's a great place to maybe engage in some slam dunk madness. But the food and the TVs galore, it's a perfect spot to watch all of your college basketball.
Game day at Walk-Ons is just different. And it starts with the way our teammates prep each dish from our scratch menu. No shortcuts. We are hand cutting every single mozzarella log straight from the block. Hand peeling, stuffing, and bacon wrapping each voodoo shrimp. Hand carving ribeyes for our steaks and po' boys. And hand slicing, then tossing our boneless wings in our house-made sauces. With wall-to-wall TVs and food like this, why would you want to watch anywhere else? That's game day. The Walk-Ons way.
That's right, Walk-Ons with 3 locations to serve you. Wesley Chapel, Tampa, and Midtown Tampa location, that's down there by the stadium, as well as Lakeland. We've been to Walk-Ons a couple times. Sly, what's your favorite dish there? What have you enjoyed?
That's a tough one. I do like the burger sliders. Those are really good.
Yeah.
And the Boom Boom Shrimp are also, I like those a lot too.
Well, the best thing about Walk-Ons is they've got tremendous happy hours twice on Thursdays. So if you have a chance to go there tonight, from 3 to 6, and then from 6 to 9, and then of course a happy hour tomorrow from 3 to 6 as well. So make sure you get to Walk-Ons, watch your college basketball there, and enjoy so a new menu too. They've got some great food there at Walk-Ons. As we wrap up the show here, who are some of your favorite cornerbacks in the draft, right? Because we're talking about some guys that may end up replacing Jamel Dean if this team comes through with the draft pick or two. And the reason why we say two is because you go back to a couple of those years. Jason Light has drafted a couple corners, right? In 2018, he actually drafted MJ Stewart in the second round before he drafted Carlton Davis. And then in 2019, drafted Sean Murphy-Bunting in the second round and drafted Jamel Dean in the third round. So there have been a couple drafts where we've seen Jason Light double up on the cornerback position, and I wouldn't blame him for doing that this year.
Yeah. So some of the best corners are my favorite corners in the coming NFL draft. Kobe Bryant out of Kansas is really exciting. The fact that they could get him in the fourth round, I think he has the ball production, the 13 interceptions with the Jayhawks, even though he's a Kansas alum and not a Kansas State.
That's fine with me.
I think he still would fit the mold of being a Todd Bowles corner. Also kind of has some swagger to him and some physicality. So really like him. Also, we mentioned Savon Ravel. And I think at 6'3", his speed, his size, he's really raw, but he's also like, he could hit his potential, and kind of like Zion McCollum. Like, he came in as a 5th round pick from a small school, Sam Houston, and you're like, okay, maybe he could be a solid player, but he's ended up becoming so much more. And with Ravel, I kind of see him becoming that much more if he's in the right system. So those two are my favorites. Another guy I want to throw out there is Notre Dame's Benjamin Morrison. So he has a unique tie to Todd Bowles because his dad, Daryl, played one season with Todd Bowles in 1993. And Morrison, while he had a hip injury last year, he had 6 interceptions in 2022. So he has a history of being that ball hawk that Bowles wants. And I also think that if he fell maybe into the second round with that hip injury and some concerns there, he would be another guy that'd be great value.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And you look at a player like Jamel Dean, you know, he had 2 interceptions in 2 years at Auburn, and just 2 during his senior season, none during a junior year. And I know Todd wants ball hawks, but the thing is if you don't do it in college, if you don't show a penchant for doing that, and listen, the guys that get the 6 interceptions, the 5, I mean, that's pretty rare, right? I think that an acceptable number in an NFL season is 2 or 3. The problem with Jamel and during his time with the Buccaneers is you look at the interceptions he had. He had 1 interception last year, none the year before, and then he had 2 back in 2022. But both of those interceptions came in the same game against the New Orleans Saints, right? That was the game there. And then the dude went like 20 games without another interception. And this team needs takeaways. They need to find guys that can be productive in taking the ball away. I was a little disappointed in Zion McCollum only had 2 this year because he dropped a couple, should have had more. Yeah. But he had 15 interceptions in his 5 seasons at Sam Houston State, including 3. You know, he averaged 3 per year. That's a pretty good number. And I think that he has that ability to blow up and have 5 or 6 in a season. 6 was his goal. And I think that he's capable of doing that. But, you go back to a couple of these years, even Carlton Davis had a blow-up year. He had 4 interceptions in 2020, helped the Bucs get to the Super Bowl, right? So they need those guys back there that are natural playmakers that can make plays in the ball. And Dean just hasn't shown the ability to do that with any regularity. Let's close the show here with LDBC's Most Wanted, $4.99 super chat. We're set with fat guys on the O-line. How many fat guys do you think we will draft on the D-line? Ideally, for me, 1 edge, 1 defensive tackle. Thank you for your content. Thank you for the super chat here. Adam, this is a really deep defensive tackle draft. We know Jason Light likes to draft defensive tackles early. Vita Vea was a first-round pick. Logan Hall was the first pick, the top of the second round in 2022. And then you've got Kalijah Kancey, who was a first-round pick the next year in 2023. Logan Hall entering a contract year this year. I don't know if he'll be back. If he blows up, if he has 5.5 sacks again, he'll probably get big money elsewhere. So you need to kind of keep replenishing that and adding better depth there. My question to you, though, is the temptation there to take one of the top tier guys in the first round if you have a guy that really is a stud that falls to you at 19? Is that too good to pass up? Or do you take the approach that this is such a deep defensive tackle draft that I could, in a sense, get a second-round caliber player in the third or the fourth round, or if I wait till day 3, I might be getting a third or fourth round caliber player in the 5th round?
I think that's exactly the strategy that Jason Light and the front office have shown, is getting value in the draft, no matter what. If it's the first round and a guy like Kalijah Cansey's that blue chip prospect on the board, you take him. But in this draft, with 41 defensive linemen going to the NFL Combine this year, when typically it's like 20, 25, that speaks to how many NFL caliber guys there are along the defensive line. So if the Bucs can go in the 4th, 5th round and get a guy that has value in the 2nd or 3rd, I think they take that and they develop him with the expectation that he's not going to be needed to be a starter right away, because you got Vita, Kalijah, Logan, and Greg Gaines, who just re-signed, but he can develop behind all of them for a year and then become a starter down the road. So I think that would be the strategy that the Bucs should take.
I totally agree. If you're looking for a strategy to help your business win and get new customers, well, we invite you to advertise with us here at Pewter Reports. That's right. We've got some great advertising partners, and we'd like to invite your business to join our ranks, and we can help you score some new customers. Advertise with Pewter Report, whether it's our Pewter Report social media that has over 110,000 combined followers, whether it's the Pewter Report podcast with over 65,000 views, listens, and downloads just in the off season alone, or with our pewterreports.com website that has 2 million unique visitors over the course of a year. Email me at sr@pewterreport.com. We have some sponsorship opportunities available. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And another great way you can help Pewter Report is to become a Pewter Report channel member. We've got some fantastic channel members in 4 different ranks that you can join, whether it's a Pewter People membership for $3.99, a Pewter Pro membership for $6.99, Pewter Premier at $9.99, or a Pewter Platinum member at $24.99. Those are different ways that you can help us. We have some travel expenses that we have to incur every year to provide you guys with the best coverage. And this is exactly where our travel budget comes from, is from endeavors like the channel memberships. Our job is to get the information from places like the Senior Bowl, the NFL Scouting Combine, and the NFL Owners Meeting, which is coming up later this month. And we'd love to have you help us get the information about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that you want to enjoy. So it's a great partnership between you, Pewter People, and us. Find the membership level that fits your budget the best, and we're happy to have you guys join the ranks of our Pewter Report TV channel members, such as our Pewter Platinum members. We met some of these fine folks on the Bucs cruise, like Raythel Gordon, Scott Federico, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson. He's 0813 was there. Yep. Ash Fishpool, Joel Orican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor for Reals, Zach Jarvis, and Kevin Thomas, who we got a chance to meet as well. So greatly appreciate all the support from everybody that helps us become a Pewter Report TV channel members, but our Pewter Platinum members get the shout out every show. So speaking of shows, our mock draft is now live. You can check that out on pewterreport.com, and make sure that you stay tuned tonight at 8:30 for our Bucs Bolster the Defense. That's our mock draft 3 show presented by Walk-Ons, as well as Sunday's live Bucs mock draft. Josh and Adam will be joined by PFF's Trevor Sikkema, our favorite Pewter Report alumni. And that'll do it for today's show. We greatly appreciate y'all joining us. We're going to be going out of town here, and Matt, so no Pewter Insider tomorrow, but we'll have one the following week. For Adam Slavon, I'm Scott Reynolds, saying we'll see you next week, unless it's tonight or Sunday, for the next edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.